Hi, my name's Ewan McGahey, and we are doing Big Tech and Media today in Enterprise Law. So the things I'd like to start off with today are these ideas. First of all, a quote from Douglas Adams in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, great book. He says, or one of his characters says, "Nothing travels faster than the speed of light, with the possible exception of bad news." And the second idea that I want to begin with is from one of the early editors of The Guardian, or Manchester Guardian as it was known then. C.P. Scott said, "Comment is free, but facts are sacred." One of the main problems that we've got to grapple with is that the media is essential for democracy, and the media shares information to voters who, at its core, at the most important, is essential for the functioning of the democratic and the political process. The media shapes whether information that we get is just clickbait and wasting time, whether it is spreading conspiracy theories, whether it is just proliferation of comment, or whether we've got fact-based analysis which people can use to make up their own minds about the important issues that face a democratic society. So, of course, there's lots of other reasons why media is important. It should also entertain us, it should educate us, but at the core, the central importance of media in a democratic society is for the functioning of democracy. So the key issues that we've got are how we can best fund a fact-based media. Secondly, who should own and control the media and the information that we get. Thirdly, can we have standards to ensure the media is accurate, that it gives impartial information and analysis, and that at the very least it does not cause harm? So we're going to go, as usual, through four different main areas: history, human rights, and market failures in relation to the media. Secondly, the financing of the media, not just equity and debt, but particularly by advertisements where they exist, through not paying for the negative effects or particularly political externalities, and where it is relevant, public funds. Then we'll look at the governance, main elements of the media. Firstly, the UK regulator is called Ofcom. Then we've got the big web media companies, Meta, Google, X, and Wikipedia, and of course the BBC in the UK. We could look at other companies, but these are really the biggest providers of news and media. And fourthly, we'll look at specifically enforceable rights, so people's right to accurate and impartial information, to avoid harmful material, and the ways in which people's data is used. When we look at the technology shifts through the media, what we've seen is a tremendous growth in the way and the breadth by which media can be distributed. So if we go back to ancient times, we have the creation of amphitheatres. The picture here is Temessos in modern-day Turkey, where the biggest audience that you get was basically however big the amphitheatre could be. Think of the Colosseum as well in ancient Rome. You could have potentially a reach to lots of people in an audience, but whoever was really in earshot. And you had town criers to basically yell on the market square, whatever the news was. But we're talking about, hundreds, possibly thousands of people capable of being reached. That really changed when you had the growth of literacy and the printing press, by which you could have the distribution of newspapers to, well, not just thousands, but tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people. Things take on a different order of magnitude again with the invention of radio. So the understanding of the electromagnetic spectrum leads the first radio broadcast to be sent out of Aldwych in London. And after radio, shortly after radio, came television. With each iteration, the broadcaster media is becoming more personal, more intimate. More and more talking just like to a human being. You can see them on TV like you could see them in the amphitheatre. But the big thing that wasn't there yet with television broadcasting, that now we do have with the internet, is interpersonal interaction. So, people can talk to the TV, but the TV isn't going to respond. By contrast, when you watch a YouTube video or you are interacting with posts on social media, you can like, you can comment, and that starts off a conversation, potentially with the person who is broadcasting, often the case on YouTube, but also with other people in the audience. So, in a way, the technology has brought us full circle. Now with social media, we are looking at an order of magnitude of billions of people that can communicate with one another all around the world. But the difference between the media that we're doing today and our last topic on communications is that communications by phone, by text, by video call are usually or mostly bilateral, whereas media's core difference is that it is about broadcasting. So usually you have one person on a platform that is sending out messages. Other people can interact, but it's more one way, nevertheless, than it is bilateral. And that's why media is largely concerned with the projection of power and the power of broadcasting political messages, especially. And that's why its regulation is such an important thing in a democracy. So a bit more, rather from the perspective of technology to the institutional history of the media. Really, we can begin with the birth of the printing press. Before the printing press, you had a body called the Star Chamber, which censored news in England. And at the moment that the printing press was invented, you have the licensing of the Press Act 1662, the government ensuring very quickly that people couldn't do printing without a license. This lasted up until 1695, and that, of course, was around the time of the Glorious Revolution. So there was the opening up of media, along with the opening up of representative government. But not long after that, you have the Stamp Act of 1712, where the government imposed a charge of 1 penny per newspaper or 1 shilling per advertisement. And this was known as a knowledge tax. So, back and forth throughout modern history since the Renaissance, you've had a game where government tries to clamp down on the media and then it's freed up again, back and forth. But I suppose we slowly get to a position that we're used to living in today, where the media becomes more and more free. It's not only freedom of expression that has to be protected through law, but it's also the right to privacy. So the famous case of Enting and Carrington is worth mentioning. Again, this was where you have someone's house being searched by a sheriff without a warrant, and the court says that one of the essential reasons that people enter society was the protection of property, including their privacy in the home, their home and their correspondence. And this is, of course, very important if you're somebody who's engaged in making publications, as was at issue in this case, which could be used or which do upset people who have political authority or are in political power. When we get to the end of the 19th century, of course, you have the invention of electricity, and the first moving images are created right at the end of the 19th century. The Edison Manufacturing Company, which we remember from the light bulb and power stations, in 1893 first start creating films. Early 20th century, Hollywood in California becomes the center of a new film industry. Charlie Chaplin starts making films in 1914, and of course these become more and more popular through the First World War, right up through the 20s and 30s, so that more and more people can see moving images. And this is an incredibly important way government realizes very quickly to broadcast their view of what's happening in the war, the appropriate propaganda to make sure that the population is supportive of the government's foreign policy and domestic policy. Within the United Kingdom, it falls to the General Post Office to license a new television company called the British Broadcasting Corporation, or BBC Co. And it broadcasts its first radio from Aldwych, as I mentioned earlier, just next to the Waterloo Bridge in central London in 1922. And shortly after that, a bit later in the 20s, you have a couple of major reports on how the BBC should be structured. The Sykes Committee says that the BBC should be funded through a licence fee. The Crawford Committee says that the BBC should be established through a royal charter, and still that is the fundamental way in which it is done today. And the importance of having a licensing fee rather than funding the BBC through general taxation is that the BBC has more financial independence. And again, very similarly, the importance of having a royal charter, not to establish the BBC through an Act of Parliament, is, at least notionally, there's some distance from government, and therefore government can't directly control in exactly the same way, or perhaps so easily, how it might be able to control a statutory corporation that is funded through general taxation. And John Reith, early, very important figure in the early BBC, says that the BBC has the purpose to educate, inform and entertain, and still that has remained the same to today. You have more channels other than BBC One on television popping up throughout the latter 20th century. The TV Act of 1954 sets up an independent television station now known as ITV. So its main difference is that it's funded not by the licence fee, but is funded by advertisements. You have the creation of a second BBC channel in 1964, which of course is BBC Two, and then a fourth channel is added under the Margaret Thatcher government. The Broadcasting Act 1980 says that there should be a new public channel, Channel 4, which is funded not from the licence fee, but primarily from advertising. And so those are still the four main channels in Britain today. But of course now we've got Freeview, which opened up from the early 2000s television stations to the whole digital spectrum, just long as you've got a license from Ofcom. Digital spectrum, of course, is different to the analog spectrum, where there could be really only a limited amount of television stations. Now there's an unlimited amount, well, not only on the digital spectrum, but also through the internet. And another dimension that becomes increasingly important, especially when you have so many different competing voices potentially dominating through the media, is the standards for their broadcasting. So in the United States, from 1929, when you have the Federal Communications Commission as the main regulator in the United States, since then you had what we call the Fairness Doctrine. So the FCC said that broadcasters on the airways had to be fair and balanced, to coin a phrase. Ronald Reagan ended the Fairness Doctrine in 1987. But in the UK, of course, the BBC had tried to be impartial and accurate anyway, but this was formalised into law. So the UK went in the opposite direction to the Americans. In 1990, the Broadcasting Act said that there were new standards that had to be enforced by the Director General, which was the news had to be duly impartial and accurate. And so these are very important standards in law. It doesn't matter that there's an unlimited amount of potential media choice on the internet, because the real risk is seen to be the fact that the lowest common denominator will drive the competition, or the worst standards will drive the competition if news can be based on falsehood, and it can be sensationalist, and it can be wildly partial. So we'll get into those at the end, but those are the key standards that were created at the end of the 20th century. So, what human rights are there that affect the media? Well, I think there's four main rights, or perhaps three or four main rights that we need to keep in mind. The first and all important one, which everything else leads to, is really the right to take part in the government. So, in the Universal Declaration, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, there is this right to representative government. Probably because when the treaties were signed, you still had Soviet Russia and Communist China, indeed still do. There wasn't a direct right to democracy. Wouldn't have been able to get political agreement internationally for that reason. But there is nevertheless this right of people to take part in government. And of course, really that's the underpinning of democracy that we see today. And that's why media matters so much. So that brings us to our second right, the right to receive and impart information and ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers. And that ties into the right to freedom of expression. And the right to freedom of expression shall not prevent, it says in the European Convention on Human Rights, from states from requiring the licensing of broadcasting, television or cinema enterprises. Then finally, in the Charter of Fundamental Rights in the European Union, we've got this idea that the freedom on pluralism of the media should be respected. And that is really just reiterating or repackaging what should already be implicit in the other rights above. A free and open media necessarily implies that there is more than one point of view. It's worth also articulating some of these ideas in greater detail, as we've seen has been done in the Animal Defenders case in the UK House of Lords in 2008. So this case revolved around a pretty shocking and intentionally shocking ad by an animal rights group. And the ad was called My Mate is a Primate, and it was about cruelty to animals and the need to stop testing and things like that on animals. And it showed pretty graphic pictures of mistreatment of animals. And the ad was blocked by what is now Clearcast, which is an independent advertisement regulator. So the government doesn't directly regulate ads, but the industry itself is doing it, and that is a system that is set up to ensure some independence for the media. The Clearcast or its predecessor blocks it from being played because it's about a political cause. Animal Defenders says that this is a breach of its right to freedom of expression, and the House of Lords disagrees. There is absolutely every possibility for freedom of expression to be regulated in a democracy because we have rules about the participation in the political process, and that we don't want advertisements to be bankrolled by people with lots of money. And Baroness Hale makes that very clear in paragraph 48. She says, in the United Kingdom and elsewhere in Europe, we don't want our government or its policies to be decided by the highest spenders. Our democracy is based upon more than one person, one vote. It is based on the view that each person has equal value. We want everyone to be able to make up their own minds on the important issues of the day. For this, we need free exchange of information and ideas. We have to accept that some people have greater resources than others with which they put their views across. But we want to avoid the grosser distortions which unrestricted access to media, broadcast media, will bring. Okay, so that's why the issue of media regulation is so important, because we want to preserve democracy, and the biggest threat, according to Baroness Hale, is that some people with lots of money warp the media and therefore the political process because they're rich or they're wealthy corporations. Now, it's worth mentioning the Sustainable Development Goal number 16. This is to promote just, peaceful and inclusive societies, and a few sub-goals are relevant for our purposes. This is that all countries around the world should develop effective, accountable and transparent institutions at all levels, and that of course includes, best way to do that is have democratic institutions at the top. 16.7 says that we should ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory and representative decision making at all levels. 16.10 says that we should ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. So freedom of the press, freedom of expression, but the idea that we need some regulation to make sure that the public has access to information implicitly in an equal way, in equal way, and with decent standards. Is embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals, although much less articulated properly than in human rights law. So what are the market failures that we get to in the media? Four main market failures, I think, are most relevant. The first is natural monopoly. So the media is characterized by network effects, and that's particularly true of social media. So remember, the idea of a network effect is that the more people there are in a network, like using telephone lines or everyone joining WhatsApp or Messenger, and the more people in a network, the more valuable the network becomes to everyone else. And so this is true for television stations because they are platforms. So the more viewers that a television station has, the more money that they can potentially raise through advertising, and therefore the more that they can pay for content creators to make TV shows, journalism, news production, and the better quality programs that they make, the more viewers that they can get. So you have this network effect. Even more clearly, that's true with social media. So think of Facebook. The more people who have friends on Facebook, or rather, the more we have friends on Facebook, the more likely we are to want to join Facebook ourselves. And so everybody joins Facebook. And of course, that is how Facebook became the original dominant social network. Same is true for Instagram, of course, bought by Facebook. Same is true for WhatsApp, as we discussed last week. But so any social media site has this network, very strong network effect. And that means that the industry is likely to tip towards oligopoly or monopoly. Then we have public goods. So I think it's important to distinguish factual information and opinion here. Pure information, factual information, is a non-excludable and non-rivalrous good. People can tell each other what the information is. Of course, like a game of Chinese whispers, it might be distorted, but information itself, knowledge, facts, are non-excludable and non-rivalrous. Lots of people can know them at one time. And of course, this is actually a very profound idea because as we improve, as we progress as a human species, it is largely built on the basis of the free sharing of information and education. By contrast, I think we can safely say that comment and opinion are not public goods in the same way. Now, of course, dominant opinions can be shared widely, but they have a different operation to factual information because they can create bubbles. Because when you have an opinion, and that's not shared by people of another opinion, these are, by their nature, rivalrous goods. And when there's multiple opinions, there's multiple rivalrous goods. And that creates a problem in a democracy because if people are operating in their own information bubbles, which are really more about being opinion bubbles, and information to feed dominant narratives or dominant opinions, then that means that people stop working together in a democratic society as well as they could. And the more that our media becomes dominated by comment and by opinion, and this is incredibly profitable, the less that we get or less time that we have devoted for good quality, informative news. And I think this is important. At this point, it's important to recall the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy quote and Douglas Adams, that the only thing that travels faster than light, is bad news. This is important because bad news really does actually factually spread. It's an empirically proven thing. It wasn't just Douglas Adams saying it. It spreads faster than good quality information. And if it's more profitable to have bad quality journalism, which is dominated by comment and opinion, then we're going to get less money being invested into good quality news. Okay, so that is the public good dimension of the media. More for information, less so for comment. Comment is free, facts are sacred. Then we have externalities. So misinformation, poor information, has negative political impacts. It can undermine democracy, and there are many ways in which misinformation can be spread. It can be spread through very harmless or very damaging clickbait. There can be lots of distraction. So the means of distraction are multiple. We're currently living through a time where the US government is just launched a war, which seems to be a very good way of distracting from the news that had not long before that come out about Trump's appearance yet again in the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein's files, including allegations that he had sex with, I think it was a 14 or 15-year-old girl. And then you've got conspiracy theories which spread all around. Very conscious that I just mentioned the Epstein files. And of course, one of the famous conspiracy theories not long before that from an organization called QAnon was that at the top of the US government and US society, there was a paedophile ring that operated out of a pizza restaurant in Washington. This, of course, is a conspiracy theory, and conspiracy theories distract from the reality. The reality was actually that there did seem to be a paedophile ring at the very top of American society, with lots of people, including Lawrence Summers, former Treasury Secretary, Donald Trump, current president, many CEOs, many leading intellectual and business figures. And of course, this is news that can only get out with good quality journalism, which is the opposite of the attention economy that the internet and social media is creating. Then we've got unequal bargaining power. So it's very hard for individuals to negotiate any terms with any big media company. You have an almost unlimited choice today on the internet, but that doesn't change the enormous power that many media organizations wield. So you don't get to shape the editorial policy of a newspaper if you buy the Daily Mail or the Daily Telegraph. You're just going to get the information the owners want to give you. You don't get to shape the algorithm, which is built by Elon Musk and the X platform, or the algorithm that shows you news on Facebook or shows you images on Instagram. You don't get to shape the algorithm that determines what YouTube shows you. You have no bargaining power really whatsoever. And that is a really important fact when we're thinking about the freedom of the consumer or the freedom of the service user, because they might shop around for different content on the internet, but if the major channels are dominated by increasingly monopolistic multinational corporations, many based in Silicon Valley, then that is not the same thing as a free market in the 19th century buying a horse in Covent Garden. Okay, so now let's get to how the media is financed. And there's three main things that we want to cover. First of all, advertising and data. Second of all, democracy and political externalities. And thirdly, public grants. So, our premise as always is that, well, if we've got private companies, they can be financed by equity, raising money from shareholders, or debt, raising money from banks. But there are also tacit forms of finance, regulatory subsidies including regulatory subsidies that organizations like those operating in the media really have. And that's why it's important to understand these are very important ways of getting money for your business, not just from shareholders and banks. So the first main way in which media in the modern era is financed is through advertising. And by extension, taking people's personal data in order to do targeted advertising. So John Lanchester, in the London Review of Books, wrote memorably in 2017 that if you're not paying for a product online, the product is you. You are the product. So you don't pay for Facebook, you don't pay for Instagram, you don't pay for X unless you have a special subscriber account, but most people don't. And so that means that you're not getting it for free. You are actually having your private data, all the information about your usage of the platform is being taken by the company and being sold on to somebody else. So you as a user are being sold as a product to Facebook, Instagram, X's advertisers, or the dwindling number of advertisers on X. Also important to realize that big platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube are all profiting despite creating no content themselves. YouTube, of course, originally was essentially in the name, meant to be your tube, something that we owned. We created the content, and originally there were no ads. But when Google bought it in 2005, one of the first things that it do is it monetized its investment. It created advertisements. And these platforms have really a very simple goal. They want to keep you on the platform as long as possible so that you're going to look at more ads. And so that's why they make the structure of their platforms addictive. You get addictions on Instagram. Fourth biggest website in 2024. You have addictive algorithms deliberately being deployed on Twitter, or now X. Fifth biggest website. YouTube. People go down rabbit holes. You click the recommended video again and again and again. And suddenly, almost single-handedly, YouTube has created a new flat earth movement. No joke. The Flat Earth Society started popping up a few years ago all around, ironically, all around the world, but particularly in America. And people met up in Flat Earth conventions to discuss how the reality of Flat Earth had been hidden from us all created by YouTube videos made by cynical content creators that are getting a share of the revenue by spreading conspiracy theories. And YouTube's algorithm was promoting that. I think it's also useful to look at the largest websites in the world and see what the differences in global revenue there are. Now, this table is from a while ago. It's 2019. And figures from 2019 and 2018. But I just want to draw attention to one main thing. At the top, and this really hasn't changed much, we'll see some slightly different ones in a second. You had Google and YouTube at the top, then Facebook. Number 5 is BBC, and these have all got enormous revenues. So Google is 136 billion global revenue in 2018, significantly more now, I think over 300 billion. Facebook was 55.8 billion. The BBC had 5 billion revenue. Amazon 232 billion. But then you have Wikipedia, which was the 7th biggest website at the time for the UK, 5th biggest in the world by a number of people visiting it, and it had just £81 million in revenue. Now that's gone up a bit now, but the main reason why is that it has no advertising. You have the pop-ups that ask people to donate, but no advertising. And so if we just think about that for a second, all these websites could be operating in the same way, but because they've got private owners, they are flooded with advertisements in order to maximize revenue. And of course, in the case of YouTube, it absolutely was advertisement free. Now, you might say, well, you wouldn't have the investment in infrastructure or the servers that need to host the YouTube videos. You wouldn't have some of the support if you didn't have very high revenues being plowed back into investment in YouTube. And that's partly true, but not entirely true. Really, what's happening with most of the revenue is that it's going into Google's coffers to accelerate whatever project the founders of Google want, but it's not being invested back into YouTube. And that means that a website like YouTube could operate on the sort of revenue that something like Wikipedia operates, orders of magnitude below the billions and billions and billions that it takes from people in advertising now. Another example of the same phenomenon is Reddit. So Reddit, of course, is a text-based and pictures chat forum for different threads to talk about, well, whatever you want on the internet, or supposed to be the internet's, sometimes said to be the internet's homepage. Reddit had, when I did this table, revenue of $100 million in 2018, but then it did an IPO in 2024, and in 2025 it has revenue of 2.2 billion because it's been flooded with advertisements in order to monetize people's investments. Now, when we look across the internet, these are the top these are the top websites in the world. So we've got Google and YouTube, as before, and of course they're owned both by Alphabet. Then you've got Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, and of course they are all owned by Meta. So we'll just pause there. The 5 biggest websites in the world are owned by 2 companies, and that's essentially 3 men: Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Mark Zuckerberg. Then at number 6, you've got X. Of course, this has declined a little bit since 2024 when I pulled out these figures, controlled by a 4th man, Elon Musk. And then at number 7, incredibly, you've got Wikipedia, which is entirely free. Number 8, you have ChatGPT. Number 9, Reddit, then Yahoo, and down at number 12, Amazon. And that's changed around a little bit in early 2026, but basically it's all the same, top 12, top 15, all there today. The most popular social networks in the world as of February 2025 were these: YouTube number 2, Facebook number 1, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok down at number 5, WeChat, Telegram, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, and so on and so on. There's Reddit and X towards the bottom. And this is important because the number of monthly active users that you have on a website is directly related to the amount of advertising revenue that you can get out of people. And it's also really important for how people, as we're about to see, are getting their information and news. An example of how websites change in order to keep people engaged and therefore maximize ad revenue, I think is very well seen with how Google has shifted. So this is a comic showing the phenomenon that we all know, that Google and other websites just want to keep you as long as possible on their website, and they actually don't want you to click away to other websites. And that's quite ironic with Google, because of course Google is originally a search engine where the whole point was that you search for something, you click on it, and then you go to another website. But Google has changed massively in the last few years, because then you got search results, which ideally had things at the top that you were most likely to want to see. That's what Google's algorithm was meant to do. But now what you have, as this comic shows, is your top search result will be AI, according to the comic, taking a wild stab at your search requests with some blatant misinformation. Then you've got sponsored result, sponsored result, sponsored result, sponsored result. Then other people ask. Then you can view various products that Google has given you. And then the thing that you actually want is some way down. And what's going on here is that Google is very simply trying to keep you in its ecosystem. And it means that the product is becoming objectively worse because of this drive towards maximizing profit, through maximizing ad revenue, through maximizing the time that you spend on its platform. Secondly, let's look at the externalities that big tech media can have on democracy and also for people's health. And the first story that I want to start with is what happened at Facebook it's about 10 years ago now, or beginning in 2015, going through to 2016. Facebook data was scraped by a company called Cambridge Analytica in the run-up to Brexit vote. There was on Facebook the possibility for third-party app providers to access the information of everyone's friends if one user clicked that they agreed to the app's conditions. So say I as a user allow an app access because I use the services of the app on Facebook. The app could see the data of everything that I could see, all my friends, if I was able to view their profiles. So one person accesses the app has access to 300, 1,000, whatever it is, number of profiles through Facebook. And so doing this with an app called, I think it was This Is Your Digital Life, a company called Cambridge Analytica built up a database through Facebook of millions of people's personal data and use this to target people with advertisements, political advertisements, in the run-up to the Brexit campaign. And nobody's ever been prosecuted for this, but it was of absolutely seismic political proportions. Dominic Cummings, who later went to Downing Street as Boris Johnson's, I think it was chief of staff, was one of the lead organisers of the Vote Leave campaign, and he boasted in 2017 that roughly 7 million people got Vote Leave ads, and they saw something like 1.5 billion ads in the last week before the Brexit referendum. Now, what Cambridge Analytica then did after that was it went to work for Ted Cruz's presidential campaign for 2016. No matter what they did, they couldn't make a figure like Ted Cruz more popular. So they, after Ted Cruz lost the Republican primary, Trump won, they went to work for Trump, and with exactly the same strategy. The head of Cambridge Analytica boasting, what was his name? Alexander Nix. He boasted on the stage that they'd made profiles of over 300 million American voters, and that was used to great effect in helping Trump to get elected for the 2016 presidential election. Now, that wasn't the only part of the story. There was also well documented in the Mueller report Russian involvement from the Kremlin, trying to get Donald Trump elected, trying to defeat Hillary Clinton. So this all came fundamentally from data companies weaponizing the personal details of people on social media. And so Brexit and Trump and Cambridge Analytica and Facebook all a part of this very, very serious and damaging shift to degrading democracies in Britain and America. Now, there is no proper regulation still of the internet. There have been baby steps forward, but from this point in 2016 and still now today, the fundamental problems are not being regulated. Ofcom, as we're going to see, could regulate media on the internet in the same way that it does television and radio, but it has declined to do so yet. Ofcom doesn't have power to regulate ownership on the internet, but it does have power to regulate the older forms, traditional media, particularly television, through the following sections. The Communications Act 2003 says Ofcom is to maintain sufficient plurality of providers of different television and radio services. Section 391 says that Ofcom should regularly conduct a review of media ownership and report that to the Secretary of State. Ofcom has the power to find somebody with less than 50% of shares of a company does in fact have control, and under Schedule 14 they have the power to ban someone owning 20% of a national newspaper and the independent television station ITV at the same time. But as you can see just from reading them, this regulation in 2003 is far behind even the regulation that is really needed for all of television, and it's not applying to the media, even though concentration of media ownership online is really the pressing problem for today. And I think it's worth just mentioning how out of date the courts are as well when it comes to this. So we don't find much from the European Court of Human Rights, and don't want to blame the Strasbourg courts too much because, of course, it takes a long time for cases to get there. But the case law that we've got is really talking about the threat to democracy from too much public ownership and monopolization of the media. So in Informationsverein Länder and Austria in 1993, Court of Human Rights says public monopoly imposes the greatest restriction on freedom of expression and can only be justified where they correspond to a pressing need. And so this is very simply saying that you can't have one state-owned TV station. But there hasn't been sufficient equivalent discussion of the problems that are created by private media monopolization. And that really, in the modern world, is becoming the issue. And increasingly so because more and more young people are getting their news from social media, not television stations and not newspapers. So what this chart shows from one of the latest Ofcom surveys in 2025 is that young people in orange, light pink, and dark pink, or getting increasingly older, get most of their information from online, particularly social media. Old people in the dark blue, purple, get most of their information, news information, from television, greater amount from newspapers. Interestingly, radio as a source for information has declined somewhat for young people, but it's actually pretty flat. But main point is, most of us today are getting our information online, and for young people aged 16 to 34 particularly, the vast majority of information is being filtered through social media, and that really means being filtered through Google and Meta, or Google and Facebook. This table shows the top 20 ways to access news from 2019 to 2025. So if we look over on the 2025 column, on the right-hand side, we can see that overall, the BBC is the biggest source of information, but that even in the last 5 or 6 years, this has declined precipitously from 78% to 68%. Facebook has gone from 35% to 30%, a slight decline, but its subsidiaries a bit further down. Instagram and Instagram in particular has gone from 13% to 18%. So, of course, the pink ones, you can look at this yourself. The pink ones are social media, and broadly this shows the picture that we've already seen, that they're increasing in market share for news. Television stations are in steady decline. We have one or two newspapers, The Guardian and the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail is certainly in decline. The Guardian and the Observer, although that's been sold off, is remaining steady. And so, this is very important. Thinking about the changing landscape of technology and news sources, very important for understanding what we should be doing in regulation. As well as changing news sources, it's important to see that we have had a decline in democratic standards almost worldwide as internet and social media has penetrated more and more and more. Now, this isn't a regression study. I'm just putting two things together. We've got the rise of social media and the internet, but factually, we've got the decline of democracies at the same time. So what this chart is showing from Freedom House is the number of countries that each year in its index are getting more democratic in the blue, or the ones that are getting less democratic in the red. It also won't surprise you to note that since 2016, really shortly after this chart begins, and after Trump was elected in the White House, or at least after he took the White House, we've had a great deal more countries going into democratic decline. We've also got the problem of the fact that people are addicted to big tech, that it causes depression and that it causes cognitive decline. Now, there is a wealth of evidence around this. I'm just going to highlight a few. Twenge and Campbell in 2009 do a study of 16,000 college students, and they found that the scores on something called the Narcissism Personality Inventory, scores for students being narcissistic was much, much higher than 20 years before, and they called narcissism an epidemic. And of course, this coincides with the increasing use of smartphones. Bergman and others in 2011 say that narcissism is exacerbated and encouraged by big tech media, encouraging superficial friendships online, encouraging people to self-promote, post unrealistic photos, presenting an image of themselves that isn't really true, because we all want to look our best on Instagram or on social media, and that is encouraging narcissism, and it's something that big tech companies want to promote because they want to encourage people to use their products more. Al Hassan in 2018 says that there's an alarming link between smartphone addiction and depression. Hunt and others in 2018 in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, as it says in the title, find that limiting social media decreases loneliness and depression. There was a study in 2025 in the Journal of Public Health of around 25,000 students or teens in Manchester, which finds that there is no necessary mental health effect from using social media or gaming. So there is some disagreement about the impact of social media. But what we're getting is a more nuanced picture now with the latest findings. So Singh and others in 2026 in JAMA Pediatrics does a study of 100,000 Australian teenagers and finds that high social media usage is definitely damaging. Moderate social media usage is beneficial, and no social media also harms mental health. So the idea here, very simply, is that if you've got no social media, you're being disconnected from your friends, so that's bad. With moderate social media usage, mental health improves, but then it declines again if you got too much. So the basic point is a little bit is good, and when we put that against big tech's business models, big tech is trying to make people do exactly the opposite. It's trying to encourage addiction with endless timelines, with an algorithm that tries to keep you hooked, putting out the most sensational or media which is likely to attract you to stay online as much as possible. So the UK government is now consulting on whether there should be a minimum age to use social media, whether platforms should switch off features like infinite scrolling, auto-playing videos, or other addictive features and features which are designed to be addictive, whether we should have overnight curfews on social media, and whether there should be age verification enforcement. And it's also looking at the role of chatbots, AI chatbots, on gaming platforms such as Roblox. Now, I think the important thing to see here is that there are lots of potential answers. Australia has just introduced a social media ban for under 16s. That's one option on the table. One of the problems with that, however, is that if you have bans that require or that depend on age verification, that means that you're not just verifying the ages of all the teenagers who you want to not use addictive products like Instagram or TikTok. It means that you're going to have age verification for every adult. So what that leads to, and this is what the privacy campaigners are saying, is that we absolutely don't want that, because what it will mean is that big tech companies suddenly have vast pools of data and personal information from everyone on the internet. And very quickly it will lead to an internet where nobody is anonymous. So probably the answer is that you do have social media bans in particular places, particularly schools. Absolutely, there are ways that social media can be regulated better. But the most important thing, perhaps, is that inherently addicted features everywhere and for everyone, not just children, are switched off by the big tech media companies. And that implies requiring to have regulation which runs contrary to the very business model that has made big tech so big. Cognitive decline is a very real problem in the modern world as well. So this is a set of charts from the Financial Times journalist John Burns Murdoch. And what they show is pretty worrying. First chart is that performance in reasoning and problem-solving tests is declining. Data from 2006 up till 2022 in science, reading and maths. And this comes from an OECD set of tests called PISA. So for teenagers, it's been pretty bad, but it's also bad for adults as well. In the US, the chart just below that shows that the number of, or the percentage of teenagers who read in their leisure time has declined a lot. So we've got almost 50% of teenagers in America who say that they hardly ever read, up from just over 15% in 1985. So that is absolutely shocking and terrible. The chart in the top right says that there's a marked rise in reports of cognitive challenges. So 18-year-olds who have trouble learning new things or difficulty thinking or concentrating, that has shot up. And I think it's important to see that this really begins with, in that first chart, it's beginning around 2012, which is Facebook's IPO. And then finally, the share of adults who struggle to process information is rising. That is particularly seen in the United States, but also it's going up in the OECD. And of course, the United States has one of the worst addictions to social media and big tech, because it's from there. We've got problems in the UK with anxiety and depression rising. So this is data from 2023. All countries have got big problems, but it is very bad in the UK. I just want to point in particular to the bottom chart, which shows that of course, we've got to exclude COVID, but national estimates of the prevalence of anxiety or symptoms is very high in the UK. We're only beaten by Korea, the United States, and Mexico. And of course, Korea is the country that came up with Squid Game. The United States is the country that hosted big tech, and Mexico has to live next to the United States. Now, third major form of financing is public grants. So I mentioned the licensing fee earlier for the BBC. This functions through the Communications TV Licensing Regulations 2004. In 2025, the licence fee is set at £174.50 a year. And in the last financial year, 24 to 25, £3.8 billion was raised through the licence fee. It's not that everyone pays the licence fee. Many people, of course, are foregoing having any television at all. They're not watching traditional media, but the licence fee is free for over 75-year-old people. Under the Communications Act 2000, and I think that should be 2003, Section 363 says that using a TV receiver without a license is an offence, and that's one of the ways in which there's very high coverage or very high enforcement of people paying the license fee. The Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, Section 27A, says that surveillance and covert human intelligence for the detection of television receivers is allowed. And there's a company called Capita, which has outsourced the dirty work of collecting license fees and threatening people with magistrates' courts on behalf of the BBC in order to collect revenue. Up to £1.5 billion was collected by them. I beg your pardon, that was the value of their contract between 2012 and 2017. And these license fee cases take up a huge amount of judicial time. It's 1/9 of all magistrate cases. And of course, we've got to ask whether that is the best way of using public resources and basically criminalizing a large section of the population. Got to be a better way of doing it than that. The last main way that we should see that media companies get financed is through their possession of a network monopoly, as for communications. So just to repeat the theory, media networks, like others, tend to tip towards monopoly. The network is more valuable the more people who join it. Rolfs wrote about this in 1974 in the theory of interdependent demand for a telecommunications service. And so the same theory that works for telephones, broadband, search engines, and directories also applies to web media, particularly social media like Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, video sharing like YouTube and TikTok, and online encyclopedias like Wikipedia. These problems of network monopolization would perhaps be ameliorated or not exist at all if the platforms were required to interoperate. But long story short, we don't have that yet. So as we saw last time in communications, the Digital Markets Act regulation in 2022 in Article 7 says that phone numbers, emails, websites, well, they're already interoperating, but also texts and calls will have to interoperate under Article 7. But the only companies or the only services that have been designated as gatekeepers and therefore subject to Article 7 are WhatsApp and Messenger so far, which are both owned by Meta. But what should happen is that they should be able to interoperate with one another at some point whenever the Commission starts actually enforcing the law. But could the same requirements for interoperability be applied to social media? And that question has become even more important since Elon Musk took over what was called Twitter and went kind of, well, slightly mad, although he probably was slightly mad before, but not showing it. So what Elon Musk did is he paid £44 billion for Twitter. Then he walked in the door of the headquarters carrying a kitchen sink and promptly fired 90% of the staff. He set up a new algorithm, and this algorithm was, in his words, designed to get rid of the biggest problem that civilization faces, he said, which is the woke mind virus. And the idea of the woke mind virus for Elon Musk is that people believe in things like equality of opportunity, fair wages, probably representative government. All these things are part of the woke mind virus, according to Elon Musk. On the platform, which he renames X, hate speech is massively resurgent. He lets back all the far-right actors that had previously been banned for spreading hatred. Donald Trump is allowed back on X, even though he incited the riot on January 6th in 2021 after he lost the election to Joe Biden. And Elon Musk, of course, when Donald Trump managed to grab back power in 2024, Elon Musk was hired by Donald Trump, who he'd given, I think it was $277 million for his election campaign. Elon Musk is on stage doing fascist salutes and is put in charge of a government body whose express purpose is to destroy government and sack people, just like he did at Twitter. So a lot of people don't like what happened to Twitter, and so they left it. And one of the main places that people have gone, as well as LinkedIn, or just not using it, is another service called Blue Sky. This was set up by a number of people, but one of them included a co-founder of Twitter called Jack Dorsey, although he later left Blue Sky. And he said that its mission was to develop and drive large-scale adoption of technologies for open and decentralized public conversation. And the idea here is that if you have a social media platform which operates through a protocol that other platforms can access and use, then there's no reason why it can't interoperate with those platforms. So you could have the interoperability or federation of Blue Sky with other services like Threads or Mastodon, and this could be a way to eclipse or outcompete X. The problem is that at the moment, Mastodon and Blue Sky have been using, I think I'm right in saying, different protocols, and they've got no incentive to try and interoperate with one another. Instead, what they're trying to do is to displace X, and that means the same problem of bubbles and silos. It's probably not going to change unless you get government regulation like extending the Digital Markets Act. Okay, so now let's talk about the governance of web media. First of all, the role of Ofcom, the regulator in broadcasting. Second, the big web media companies, Google, Meta, X, and perhaps the most important model is Wikimedia. And thirdly, the BBC. So Ofcom's role in broadcasting is to oversee somewhat loosely the standards in the media. As we've seen before, the Office of Communications, Ofcom, is appointed by the Secretary of State. They're meant to have one worker director, and their powers are set out in the 2003 Communications Act. Section 3 says Ofcom has duties for high quality television and radio, to cater for a variety of tastes and interests, to prevent offensive or harmful material being aired, and to ensure there's no unfair treatment of different groups in programs or unwanted infringements of privacy. The scope of Ofcom's powers seem to be pretty broad. So if you combine sections 32 and 232, Ofcom has power to regulate an electronic communications network, or all electronic communications networks, and the distribution of a service by any means involving the use of an electronic communications network. And so clearly this could cover the internet, just on the plain reading of the words. But Ofcom has not done that yet. It hasn't used the powers which are very arguably there in the Communications Act 2003 to regulate the internet, even though you've got identical services on social media as you do on television. Literally the difference between the tube and your tube. So why Ofcom hasn't done it? Good question, but probably the simplest answer is that it would be a big job. Ofcom doesn't have the funding, and so they've interpreted their remit in a way that is artificially narrow. Section 319 says that Ofcom is in charge of the broadcasting code, and it periodically reviews this for television and radio. The Broadcasting Act of 1990 in sections 3 and 4 says that Ofcom has a role of licensing those who are fit and proper to run broadcasting, and can set conditions, including governance conditions if it wanted to, that appear to Ofcom to be appropriate. And so that means that Ofcom would have the power to say to television stations, radio stations, online media, if it wanted to, Ofcom wants to see particular changes in governance as conditions for the licenses that it gives out. It is an offence to broadcast without a license, although remember, we've effectively got broadcasting online, but none of that is being licensed at the moment because Ofcom has not interpreted its powers that way. And under sections 41 to 42, Ofcom can revoke licenses for failure to comply with directions and issue fines of up to 5% of advertising revenue for not complying with license terms. Now, because Ofcom effectively isn't regulating, nobody's regulating the internet, the big web media companies effectively regulate themselves. So that means it's important to recall how Meta, Alphabet, and X are governed. And long story short, they're dominated by about 4 men. So Meta, which has a global revenue of $200 billion in 2025, and remember, it owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, is basically controlled by Mark Zuckerberg, who only has 16% of shares since the initial public offering, but he has issued multiple voting rights on the shares that he controls. So he ends up controlling 60% of the votes, even though he's only got 16% of the money. And there's no reason why the law in the United States needs to allow this, but since the 1980s, under Reagan, the Securities and Exchange Commission has allowed dual-class share structures, and that means that somebody like Mark Zuckerberg, despite all his flaws and his terrible judgment, including surrounding the events that led up to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, can exercise control in a way that nobody can shift except for government. And that would have to be the US government or a government elsewhere that wanted to take on Meta with all the predictable consequences. Service users did have a right before Facebook's initial public offering to vote, very interesting, in the governance structure, and they could specifically vote on any changes to the data use policy. But when Facebook organized its IPO, it withdrew this right, and that means that service users effectively have no voice in the way that Facebook is controlled anymore. And as we've seen, that led to widespread violations of privacy rights in the run-up to the Brexit and Trump votes. In 2015, we have a Statement of Rights and Responsibilities, which governs privacy use now, and the problems on Facebook are just massive, contributing to genocide in Myanmar. A few years ago, Mark Zuckerberg publicly saying that they weren't going to do anything about accounts on Facebook that issued Holocaust denials, even in his words multiple times, still wouldn't lead to an account suspension. And I think it's really important to see that all these terrible decisions about the way that Facebook is run and all the terrible consequences that have flowed come from the basic aim to maximize ad revenue and therefore addiction to the platform, and bad news spreads faster than good news. Shocking content spreads more widely, and so maximizing terrible content on Facebook has been incredibly good for business. Alphabet is controlled or is the controlling entity over Google and YouTube. It had a revenue of $400 billion in 2025. Its constitution is set out in bylaws and certificate from 2015. YouTube has group of terms of service. Last time I checked, it was from 2010. And like Facebook, like Meta, you've got two people, the founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, controlling Class B stock, which has 10 votes a share. So they together exercise total control. Google has been somewhat better than Mark Zuckerberg was in controlling appalling content on their platform. So, for instance, in 2018, in August, Alex Jones, who famously said, what was it? Things in the water from the US government are turning the frogs gay. The terrible conspiracy theorist, right-wing disc jockey. He was banned from YouTube, except much of the policy shifts that YouTube made at the end of the first Trump government and kept during Biden are being rolled back since Trump got elected again, and Google executives were prominent in attending Trump's inauguration, and so there we are, cozying up to the regime. Then we've got X, formerly known as Twitter. It had $2.9 billion in revenue in 2025, significantly down from when Elon Musk took it over, $4.7 billion in 2022. Terms of service, rules and privacy policy are set in 2016, although those are likely to have changed. It did ban Trump, but then Elon Musk took over, fired most of the staff, and allowed back all the far-right hate groups, Donald Trump, Tommy Robinson in the UK, and so on. Now, those are all, typical and incredibly authoritarian governed companies. That is the nature of Silicon Valley's governance. But the really interesting one is where governance is much more stakeholder and democratically oriented. And the leading light here is the Wikimedia Foundation, which everyone knows for the online encyclopedia, Wikipedia. So in 2024 to 2025, its revenue was $208 million, a tiny fraction of the big tech companies because, as we've seen, it does not run advertisements. But even more incredible is that Wikipedia has an open stakeholder-oriented governance structure. So it is a Florida corporation. It has a 10-person board of directors. 3 of the directors are elected by editors. 2 of the directors are elected by chapters, which are regional groupings of members of Wikipedia. And remember, anybody can sign up to get an account on Wikipedia. And if you use Wikipedia, if you're an editor, then you will have messages popping up telling you that you can vote. It has very low participation, but the lack of participation overall compared to the number of editors and number of users is made up for the fact that the people who do participate take it very seriously. And as we can see, it is 50% controlled by the service users and the workers effectively on Wikipedia. There is 1 seat for the founder, who's called Jimmy Wales, and 4 of the seats are people who are appointed by the existing board. So you have a governance structure which is heavily stakeholder oriented. Then we've got the BBC. So the BBC's governance structure is actually just really a Morrisonian model style top-down system where the board of directors and the chair plus 4 nation directors are appointed by the Prime Minister. Has 14 members maximum, 4-year maximum. And its constitution or its governing documents in Article 10 require that there is engagement with the public, the audience, the listeners. And Article 35 requires that there's communication with staff. The BBC staff have to be consulted on all matters affecting the interests of those staff. But the service users, the audiences, and the workers, the staff, don't get any actual votes. So significantly less democratic than Wikipedia, old-style nationalised industry governance at the BBC. And that creates all sorts of problems because, the key thing that matters with the BBC is that there's not government control. There had been a habit of government standing back and not making overtly political appointments. All that has really gone in the last Conservative government with various prime ministers spinning out of control, particularly towards the end. And reform of BBC governance is a topic that's coming back into current public debate. Easy answer would be to give more voice and votes to the service users, the public, and the staff. So we see this at France.tv. This requires that 1 director on the board is elected by viewers and a recognised consumer association. So you see that in the Consumer Code, Article L411. And also there must be, by general law in France, at least 2 members of boards of directors elected by workers. At France TV, it's currently 3 members. And so having more stakeholder involvement is a way of reducing the the connection, therefore, lack of impartiality that is created by having government appointments. Another thing that you could do, as well as having majority stakeholder appointments, is you could ensure that it's not the Prime Minister that appoints the head of the BBC, but an all-party parliamentary committee. Okay, so what are the specific rights that viewers, listeners, and readers, consumers, service users of the media have? Three main ones that we want to cover are the standards for accuracy and impartiality. Second one is equality and harmful material. Third one is privacy and data. So the rules on accuracy and impartiality are laid down in sections 319 of the Communications Act 2003. Requirement for due impartiality, requirement for due accuracy, and then also F says there has to be adequate protection against offensive and harmful material. And remember, Ofcom is not applying these to X, to YouTube, where the appalling, racist, sexist, conspiracy theory driven material is found most frequently, and that's where so many people are getting their news from. Examples of applications of these doctrines show that, well, it's quite straightforward. So in DM Digital and Ofcom, there was a High Court case where an Islamic scholar called for people to attack or kill apostates. So apostates are people who were religious and then renounce their religion. Specifically targeted, of course, Muslims who become agnostic or atheist. They should be killed, according to this so-called Islamic scholar. The station also criticised NATO and a Pakistani party without giving the organisations a chance to offer their views. And it was held, very unsurprisingly, by the High Court. This was a clear violation of Section 319, to say the least. Another example in the Court of Appeal is the Gaunt case and Ofcom. Here you had a right-wing disc jockey who got somebody from the local council to interview, and the interview turned into a tirade of abuse. The council was limiting smoking, and the interviewee was called a health Nazi and an ignorant pig. And this was held by the Court of Appeal to violate the standards in Section 319 of the Communications Act. Gaunt then said that, after being disciplined, that this was a violation of his right to freedom of expression. So he tried to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights, and unsurprisingly, they rejected his appeal. They held there was no interference with his right to freedom of expression. Very clearly, because you can regulate the media. Now, Ofcom has done some enforcement work. There were investigations open to the Murdoch-owned GB News and Talk TV. Beg your pardon, I'm not sure GB News is owned by Murdoch, but anyway, these are two very right-wing TV stations, specialise in increasingly extreme content. Although they have the veneer of trying to be impartial, in reality they're a propaganda station for their right-wing owners. Talk TV ceased almost entirely, except for online, in 2024. Ofcom also withdrew a license from Russia Today when Putin launched the appalling invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Wikipedia also has a system completely separate from the Communications Act, but essentially does the same thing already. So the way that it does this is through a set of policies that are listed here. It swiftly deals with illegal content, but also fake news, biased content, and it has a very simple system for punishing offenders, which is suspending their accounts. So first policy is that on Wikipedia there should be no personal attacks. So editors who interact with one another have to act in good faith, and just think about that in contrast with any internet chat forum. But so there's absolutely no reason why YouTube couldn't do that, why X couldn't do that, so that people do actually learn to interact with one another in good faith. It works on Wikipedia, works in workplaces all around the world, of course, but online, for some reason, when we put on our online hats behind anonymity, people act in appalling ways to each other. WP sock puppetry, another policy. says that editors may not have unregistered bots. Think about that in contrast to X or Facebook, where the number of bots is phenomenal, and many of these bots are proliferating at times of elections in order to influence voters through spamming content feeds, comment feeds. There's WP neutral. The information in the articles in Wikipedia has to be neutral or impartial, has to be verifiable, so that this is the way of getting accuracy, so that you have sources that can be checked. And then there's a system of administrators. So administrators on Wikipedia are people who are editors that have been around for a while. They apply to become an administrator through an application process, and they're screened for their contributions. And if they're accepted to be an administrator, they enforce Wikipedia's policies. They can enforce standards by suspending accounts that violate Wikipedia's rules, and in extreme cases, they can also ban accounts. But this happens regularly in order to enforce rules, and that's why Wikipedia has been so incredibly successful in creating content that makes it the most trusted encyclopedia, even better than Britannica. And although I think Elon Musk has got a project called Grokopedia, it's very unlikely that Wikipedia is going to be outdone by that. That is based on AI, which is harvesting data from all around the internet, but in particular from Wikipedia, which is absolutely mad to think that AI is going to do a better job. Wikipedia, for example, has banned the Daily Mail as being an unreliable source. So in order to ensure that there is accurate and impartial content, it has banned an inaccurate and sensationalist so-called newspaper, the Daily Mail, which of course is one of the best-selling in the UK and one of the top websites, but not good enough for Wikipedia because, in its words, it had poor fact-checking, sensationalism, and many instances of flat-out fabrication. Then we get to regulation of harmful material. And so Ofcom is not doing sort of really basic things about accuracy and impartial information that would really make a difference for the way news media of the internet was done. But there are a new set of rules that, at the very least, are taking baby steps to regulate illegal content. And we see this, first of all, in the European Union Digital Services Act regulation of 2022. So Article 33 says the rules will apply where a platform has 45 million users or more in the EU and is designated by the Commission as being a very large online platform, and we'll get to the list of that in a second. Article 3H says that illegal content is defined as content not complying with an EU or member state law. Articles 4 to 6 create liability for illegal content if a platform has actual knowledge. Articles 8 to 9 says that there is no general fact monitoring duty on large platforms, but there is a duty to act on an order to remove any illegal content. Articles 14 and 15, and the orders would come from a regulator. Articles 14 and 15 say that terms with algorithmic decision-making must be made transparent if they restrict the use of the service, and that has to be put in the annual report. Article 16 says that hosts of a service must have a system for notifying and promptly taking down illegal content, and they must have systems for users to report illegal content, and they must notify authorities if there is any suspicion on behalf of the platform of a criminal offence. Articles 34 and 5 say that there's a duty to identify risks from algorithms and systems to mitigate those risks. Articles 45 to 7 says that codes of conduct have to be drawn up for best practice, and to enforce all of this, as well as the regulators, they can impose fines of up to 6% of worldwide annual turnover. So who are the very large online platforms that have been designated by the Commission? Well, the answer is this list here. And you see all the big tech media platforms that we've been talking about: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Wikipedia, Pinterest, and others. And of course, the designation of very large online platform goes further than just the sort of media regulation content stuff, but these are the most important ones for the purpose of the Digital Services Act regulation. Now, we've got a very similar piece of legislation in the UK, known as the Online Safety Act 2023, which essentially implements the provisions of the Digital Services Act into UK law. Section 9 says that there's a duty of user-to-user platforms to carry out illegal content risk assessments. And under 5B, algorithms for content dissemination. Section 10.2 says that there's a duty to take proportionate measures to prevent people encountering priority illegal content and swiftly take down illegal content. Section 59 says that illegal content is something that is an offence under the Act or order or regulations, and priority illegal content involves terrorism, child sex offences, and other offences which you can find listed in Schedule 7. Sections 122 to 4 says that tech notices can be issued to companies that are not protecting users, and Schedule 3, Paragraph 4 says that there can be a fine of £80 million or 10% of annual turnover, whichever is higher. So the UK is having higher fines than the EU regulation foresees, but other member states can do that as well. We also have a few more rules that were already in EU law under the Audio Visual Media Services Directive 2010. Article 6 said that there should be no hatred being disseminated on audio visual media services. Article 7 says that services have to be accessible for the disabled. Article 9 says that there should be no subliminal advertising, no discrimination. Article 28b says that video sharing sites like YouTube, TikTok should make sure that they protect people's, children's or minors' development and prevent the incitement of hatred and the conduct of any crime. So an example of this is a case called CG and Facebook Ireland in 2016. So Facebook was held by the Northern Ireland Court of Appeal to count as an information society service. So that basically means lighter regulation. But even though it was an information society service, it was liable for not removing a violent group, even though it took down the group's posts. So now the Digital Services Act is going a step further and putting more proactive duties on companies like Facebook and Meta. Finally, we get to the question of privacy and data. The Digital Services Act 2022, Articles 26 and 28, say that targeted ads based on sensitive data are banned, but only those advertisements are banned. So you can still have advertisements that are micro-targeted at people. However, this is a developing area of the law, and it looks likely that stronger regulation is going to continue. In 2024, the political advertising regulation was passed by the EU, and this deals with the problem of far-right and foreign influence in European Union elections. So Article 32b says that political advertisements are those which are designed to influence elections. Article 5 says that no advertisements from outside of the EU can be shown within 3 months of an election. Article 7 says that sponsors who run ads have to declare whether an ad is political. Article 9 says that those who show ads, broadcasters, have to keep records of political ad spending and the identity of the sponsor, including the entity that ultimately controls the sponsor, so looking through the corporate veil. Article 11 says that a political ad must state that it is political. Article 12 said that it has to state the identity of the ultimate controller, and the EU has to keep a repository for online ads under Article 13. And the logical next step is, why not limit or even ban spending on political ads altogether, especially if you move to a system of public funding for elections. And the reason why this is so important is what we all know, that America has descended into an awful abyss very close to authoritarianism because, and this is what we might not know, the United States is the only country in the OECD that doesn't limit advertising, doesn't limit spending, including by corporations or just rich people who are running for election at election times. And that's true because it was mandated under case law on the First Amendment by the US Supreme Court, beginning with a decision called Buckley and Valeo in 1976. So actually the case that I started with, Animal Defenders, and the quote by Baroness Hale, sees her, if you read the rest of the judgment, talking about the detrimental impact of Buckley and Valeo, that being the elephant in the room, and what we want to avoid in the UK, Europe, and the rest of the democratic world, because we see that corporate money has steadily de-democratized the United States ever since 1976. Okay, so now let's get to final thoughts on what some options for reform could be. So first of all, across the news media, Ofcom could and probably should apply broadcasting accuracy, impartiality and equality standards to all major media outlets. If they're over some threshold, let's say you have a threshold of 1 million, pick another threshold if you like, million active users monthly, it could be whatever you like. But the basic point is that it should incorporate in the regulation big online sites such as YouTube, X, Instagram, and so forth, just like the TV stations. Because if these are main sources of news for people, then they matter just as much as traditional television. Secondly, make sure that journalists retain editorial control, autonomous from any outlet owner. And by extension, we should probably look into the way that algorithms are set by YouTube, by X, by Facebook, to ensure that there is good content, not content that is simply there for clickbait. Opening up the algorithms, of course, is something that all the big tech companies will be fiercely resistant to. An even more radical option would be, and this is currently being discussed in an EU proposal, is to set up a public option alternative to the big tech companies that can run a free social media platform without advertising. And it's quite likely that if there were a free public option, it was run in a reasonably well way, that users would want to switch because nobody actually does like all the ads that are run on big tech or the big tech companies themselves. Specifically about social media and big tech, there's no reason why we couldn't apply the Digital Markets Act, Article 7 on interoperability to posts, links, and videos on a social media platform so that they interoperate, and that would be a relatively good way of breaking their monopolies. And then also regulate their governance, require that social media firms, just like traditional media firms, have at least 1/3 of the board elected by service users. We already see a good model of that on Wikipedia. Apply that to Facebook, X, YouTube, and other ones that have a significant systemic effect on the media that we consume. And then looking more closely at television, traditional television, BBC and Channel 4, give Channel 4 and BBC public broadcasters a remit and a duty to expand regional and local journalism and websites where there is a deficit of good quality news. We know that factual information is under pressure in sort of a sea of misinformation, so invest more in good quality local journalism that affect people close to where they actually live. Make sure that all media organisations, including the BBC and Channel 4, have elected staff on their boards of directors. And finally, to advance the flow of free information, why not make the BBC archives, Channel 4 archives as well, open to the public if they're over, let's say, a 30-year period, after which you're probably not going to make so much revenue in selling copies of DVDs or whatever else, streaming. make the archives open so that everybody around the world can enjoy the fantastic content that there has been for over 100 years. And that is the regulation of the medium.